Hi, in tip number 8 for Google Forms Essentials, we're looking at doing our final modification on all of our settings. Now, in step number 2, we reviewed response settings because we want to be thinking about these things and getting them set up before we get too deep into setting up our form. But now we're going to talk about modifying response settings. And not only will we review whether or not our response settings are set up, we'll look at presentation settings as well. So hop over to your Google form and click on settings. Now, initially we were looking at response settings, so you can just tuck that up for now. And then we're going to take a look at presentation. For very long forms, you may or may not want to show a progress bar. But if you do want to, you can. That's a relatively new feature in Google Forms, is that you can show a progress bar, especially for long surveys. You can opt to turn on or off shuffle question order. So I have that turned off. The confirmation message is really important. It's part of the basic tutorial, but it's also my tip for seasoned users. Think about how you can leverage this real estate. You should always edit the confirmation message no matter what, because by default it says your response has been recorded. And that is terrible. I mean, it's fine, but you could do so much better than that. So for thank you for your participation, because we're thanking them. Visit the website www.edtrekkers.com. Mark your calendar, September 14th, right? If you're teacher, you may say, okay, proceed to assignment number 3. Okay, there's so many things you can do here, but so we're just going to say thank you for your participation. Visit the website, mark your calendar, and save. Think about how you can leverage this. You can create an Easter egg, so when students submit like a quiz, maybe it takes them to a fun activity where they can play a game. Maybe it takes them to their next assignment. If you do like a choose your an adventure type of project where students start out in a doc, and then when they complete the activities in the doc, it links it to the form. When they complete the quiz in the form and they get the confirmation message, it takes them to a YouTube video or a Google map, whatever. So I won't belabor the point. I think that you can use your own imagination and creativity to think how you can leverage the real estate in the confirmation message area. Couple things about this. Show a link to submit another response. Now, if you are going to test this out several times, leave it on, right? But if you're not, then turn it off, right? It depends. Like, are you doing data entry? So you just want to keep going over, enter this, enter this, enter this. You're going to want a link to another response, especially if people have to enter 3 or 4 things that they have. But if you're trying to limit it to one response, you definitely want to like turn that off, right? When we edited our responses earlier, we turned off limit to one response because we're going to test out our survey several times. And if you turn this on and test it out once, then when you go to test it out again, it'll say, no, you've already taken this survey. The thing is, if you are going to want to limit it to one response after you test it out, you're going to want to come back and turn this on. Okay. But in this case, we have it turned off. Now, when I turned it on, by default, the show link to submit another response was also turned off. But I'm going to keep it on because in the next video, we're going to test out our survey several times. All right. And then the other option here, which is really, really cool, is if you're polling people, let's say you're polling the community on whether or not you should teach world language before grade 2. And you want the public to give anonymous opinions, but you also want them to see the results summary, the little charts and graphs that tell like where public opinion is leaning in real time. You can turn this on. And then when they hit submit, it will say view the results, view the current results. So that's kind of a cool feature. All right. I generally don't disable autosave for respondents. All right. And then last but not least, in the bottom here, you have the opportunity to modify your default settings. Like, do you want to collect email addresses verified by default? No, I want it to be responder input by default. Or maybe I just don't want to collect them at all by default and add my own email question. It's really up to you. And then question defaults here, options are, do you want your questions to be required by default or not? And most people do. They want that turned on. So if they go to hit submit and they haven't answered a question, it says, whoops, you have to answer this question before you can hit submit. So those are your default options in settings. So take a minute to review your settings, make sure they're set up the way that you want them to be set up, and then return back to the next video where we'll talk about uh, trying out your survey.